Hi, thank you for joining us on Issues and Answers. I'm Melissa Summers. Now, grab a pen and paper because if you have issues, God has the answers, and we're working through the issues and answers with a committee of Christian counselors, and they're very inspiring. So my email address, feel free, is melissa.summers@3abn.org, okay? Now, today's issues, we're discussing the realities of divorce. And our guest is Nancy Van Pelt. She's best-selling author, has written 28 books on family relationships, which have been translated in about 30 languages. She's a certified family life educator, has conducted thousands of seminars around the world. And Nancy, that is a mouthful. Girl, you have been busy.
I have been busy.
We'll jump right into it. Divorce. What now?
A lot of hurt, a lot of tears, a lot of regrets. It is not a fun or an easy thing to go through, and yet it is a reality even in the Christian community today. In fact, sometimes I think Satan works harder on Christians because every time there is a marriage breakdown, he in some small way is winning and feels that he has won up on Christ. And that is sad. Now, I recognize that there are some marriages that cannot be salvaged, but I think we need to spend more time educating people toward happy marriages than we need to spend time on divorce. But divorce is a very much a reality in today's world.
Okay, now the big question, how do you deal with this reality? And, you know, I can definitely go with my personal experience. You know, I mean, it hasn't gone to divorce yet, but I mean, it's emotionally severing. It's worse than a death. And actually, there was a lady from, what country? She came during what we call a general conference somewhere in the Philippines, and we cried and cried together because she was alone, had lost her husband to death, and I, of course, had lost my husband. He asked for a divorce, and she was sympathizing with me and consoling me. It is true that it's worse than death.
Yes, you see, in death, we remember the person in a positive manner, but in divorce, we remember all of the unpleasant, all of the hurtful things. And so we have these two different perspectives. Now, it takes about the same amount of time to recoup whether it's death or divorce. But divorce is so much more unpleasant because of the painful memories that one remembers. You see, when we fall in love, we have been selected by somebody. Out of all the people in the world, we are the chosen one. And what happens to our self-esteem? Our emotions and our self-esteem soar. We are walking on top of the world. We have made it. But to the same degree, when divorce happens, we have now been deselected. Somebody is casting us aside. And to the same degree, our divorce now, our self-esteem now suffers.
Okay, let's run through the gamut of emotions that one can expect, because, you know, Nancy, I was totally clueless to what I would feel, and even now, honestly, a lot of times I can't identify. Like Sunday, I was just crying and crying and couldn't stop. And I was like, Lord, I was feeling better. What is going on with me? Why can't I stop crying?
That's because we move through stages of acceptance, and it would be nice if we would start here and could just move onward and upward straight into full recovery, but that isn't the way it works at all. The initial stage is denial. I simply cannot accept what is happening. This can't be happening. It isn't true.
What are some signs of denial? Now, you know, again, I hope you don't mind me using myself as an example, because I don't mind. But, you know, I said, okay, you know, he's asked for a divorce, and I'm facing it. But so I didn't see myself in denial. But anytime someone says you're single or you're by yourself, I would get this disappointment, this anger, all these emotions. It's like, I'm not single.
Right. And to a degree, you are not, because the divorce process is not complete. You are yet in limbo, and that is one of the tragedies of all this. You do not know yet who you really are, because it has not gone to completion. You still are a married woman, yet you have no partner to share that with. And so you are in transition yet. But one of these symptoms or signs of denial is to say, no, this isn't happening. Another is to say, he will come back. I know if I just change, if I just do this, if I just do that, he will come back. And there is not an acceptance of the fact that the partner is gone and may not come back. Now, there is always a chance for reconciliation. And for this reason, I always admonish people not to move too rapidly. Do not head immediately for the divorce court. Allow God to work in your lives. This is a time when people need to really do some soul searching, and the wise person will. I am not blaming you or anybody for the divorce, but it is a good time to look at your life, to look at your character, to look deep inside of yourself. This is the time to get some counseling and take a deep look inside. Is there anything in my life that has contributed to the breakdown of this relationship? Sometimes the person will find that they are not at fault at all. Other times people will find, I see, because I have this character flaw or this personality defect, yes, I am at fault. So the wise person will take a deeper look at themselves.
Okay, so dealing with denial. So from denial, what else?
The next stage is a total feeling of worthlessness. Now, when we talk about total feeling of worthlessness, this is a self-esteem issue, and it has to do with this feeling of being cast aside and not knowing who you are anymore because you were a married person. Now you're not. I'm thinking of a very good friend of mine who was married to a physician, and he cast her aside and asked for a divorce to marry her best friend. And not only, you see, if you're a physician's wife, you are losing a lifestyle. Up until now, you have been Mrs. Dr. So-and-so. All of this was being cast aside. So she is losing a lifestyle that she had never known anything else but that. So who is she? She had to find out who she was. The feelings of bitterness and anger that can come through this process was tremendous. In this particular case, not only did he cast her aside, but he wanted their 3 children. And a doctor is in a good position, shall we say, to purchase his children, to buy the children away. And so the first one, he said, your mother can't afford to buy you that ATV you want, but I can get you this big bike, you know, whatever. And so the first one,
loyalty and affection of the child.
The second one, he said, you know, he says, I can buy you that Porsche you want. I'll let you take it to the show, you know. So pretty soon, not only had she lost her husband and a lifestyle, but she had lost all 3 children. And the hurt inside of her was so tremendous that one night, in the middle of the night, she felt she couldn't handle it anymore, and she ran outside in her night clothes, almost totally unaware of what she was doing, threw herself on the grass and said, Lord, you must take this from me right now. I can't handle it anymore. And she said it was gone, just like that.
You know what, Nancy, and let's elaborate on that, because a lot of times we hear people talk about on all of these, you know, shows and so forth about divorce and dealing. That is so true, because there have been several times here at 3ABN, you know, just dealing with the emotions of the potential of a divorce and separated from my husband, that I said, Lord, I can't do anything else. I'm emotionally stripped. I'm broken. Help me. Crying out, pleading out. And do you know, in fact, that particular day, it was a Sunday, the Lord sent our pastor, Pastor John Lowe McCain, and his wife, Angie. They did not know anything of where I was and my destitute emotionally, but they came with this big pot, and Angie's just so bubbly. She's like, hey, girl, with her, you know, island accent. And the Lord sent them to me, and they comforted me, and they talked with me. But I was at that point, at my lowest ebb, that I was literally on the floor in my apartment pleading to the Lord. and he answered. So please elaborate that the Lord will heal and he will be there.
You know, when a person is at this emotional turmoil, and emotional turmoil is the third stage that we're talking about following the tragedy of divorce, this is when your emotions are so out of control and the feelings of anger and so forth well up. And it might be at this stage that a person really recognizes that they need counseling. But for this reason that we're talking about right now, this is why Christian counseling is what is really needed. You see, a worldly counselor can have all the psychology. They can know all the stages of grief and so forth, but they can only lead you so far, because it is only through our Lord. He's the only one that can take that load away from us. Otherwise, the counselor can only lead you so far, but he's the one that can clear it from our heart and our minds. Not that it will ever be forgotten. The scars will always be there, but he's the one that can do the healing in our lives. Does it always happen like this, like my friend? No. Sometimes it's a gradual process, but he's the one that can do the final healing in all of this.
As a Christian counselor, you have someone coming to you like your friend. What is some of the advice that has been most profound, most helpful as a counselor for someone that maybe in their Christian walk they're not aware, they don't want to hear, okay, pray to God and he'll answer it?
Right. One of the things that I frequently have people do with all their hurts and resentments, all their anger, is start keeping a diary, start writing it out. There is something extremely therapeutic by keeping a journal or a day-to-day diary, and then they have to bring it to me and read it to me. Now, when there seems to be an accumulation of these hurts and they do not seem to be able to get over the hump, to be able to allow it, to release it to the Lord, it just seems to continue to build up. What I have them do is continue to write out this, all their hurt, all the pain, all the anger.
So identifying with...
Write out every lousy, rotten, mean, horrible thing that man ever did to you, every way he ever hurt. And some women say, I go out and I buy a brand new notebook and I'll fill it all pages. And they bring it back to me and they triumphantly lay it in front of me. They've taken their time, and now they want to read it to me. And I say, no. Now we're going to take this notebook
and burn it. Because going back over it is rehashing
it. And whenever, this is actually sort of a fearful thing to do, because whenever we write things down, what it does is reinforce it in our brains. And I do not want this negative reinforced in their brain. But what it does, it's a final release. And then as they watch it go up in flames, as they see it turn to ashes, they recognize that this is a final release, and they can release it to the Lord. And they are now clean and an empty vessel for the Lord to begin to fill up as they let all of the anger go.
And you have actually witnessed this working?
Yeah, I have actually witnessed this working in a woman who was so angry with her husband, she said, I want to kill him. Wow. And I asked him, I said, do you believe that she would do this? He said, I would never turn my back on her. She was so angry, and I actually saw this happen in her life.
What else? We write the journal, we let it go up in flames.
There is a certain type of counseling that I would like to recommend to people, and it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. There are counselors and there are counselors. First of all, it needs to be a Christian counselor. I believe that the Christian aspect of this is so important. Not just going to any, shall we say, county mental health clinic. Mm-hmm. They, again, may have certain skills, but they can only take you so far. Mm-hmm. But there's a certain type of therapy now that they are finding as better results in many different areas of life than any other type of counseling, and it's getting a lot of media attention, and it's getting a lot of studies done on it.
Now it's called cognitive?
Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short.
Now, what is that?
Okay, cognitive simply means our thoughts, how we are thinking this moment on any given subject. But the truth of the matter is our feelings follow our thoughts. Our feelings follow the bent of our will. So if we can set our will in the right direction, our feelings and our thoughts will follow.
They're just now coming out with this?
Yeah, it's been around just a few years.
And I say that because biblically, that's the whole Christian stance. The flesh surrenders to the will. You don't give in to the flesh. You give in to the will. And it starts in the mind.
So people that are suffering from the after effects of divorce are thinking very, very negatively about themselves, about life. Much of their anger is turned toward themselves. Much of their anger may be turned toward God. They don't even recognize that they are angry toward God. But if we can change their thinking, we can change the direction of their lives. And so for this reason, I really recommend this CBT that is making a big impact and changing the direction of people's lives.
You know, this is just amazing because, you know, just in reading the Bible, studying the Bible, and there's a book by Ellen G. White called Mind, Character, and Personality, and it explains that your thoughts become your actions become your habits become your character, who you are. So if you're thinking angry, resentful, that's who you become, angry and resentful.
And Scripture says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So if you are thinking all of these negative thoughts, whether they're about somebody else or whether they're about yourself, you are not in a positive direction where you can make any changes in your own life. You are not accepting this new status in life. For example, what happens to your self-esteem? You've just been cast aside. Somebody has just asked you for a divorce. You begin to think, oh, he doesn't want me anymore. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I'm never going to get married again. Nobody is ever going to want me. This is all negative thought. And in my book, Smart Love, I take some studies that have been done on women who think this way and women who change their way of thinking and track that and see that one group is going to end up married and the other group is not going to end up married simply because of their thinking patterns.
That's true, because I had a lot of friends that said, oh, I'll never find the right man, I'll never get married, da-da-da-da. And I never thought that, you know. I knew I was outgoing, you know, I just never thought that. You know, I know the Lord had someone for me. So this is what you're telling people. It's like when you're going through divorce, the realities are it is a divorce. So to move forward, what are some signs to show me that I am on the road to healing? I mean, I'm crying Sunday, and I thought I was healing. I was feeling better.
And what I want you to know is that that is perfectly normal. Because we
I
make
don't like it.
We don't like it. But it is a sign that you are probably making progress. Because from time to time, you're going to need to release these pent-up emotions. But we never just move straight upward. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But the adjustment phase comes next, where you will start feeling better, not for a period of time. Every moment of the day is no longer going to be occupied just thinking about the tragedy in your life. So you can cope for longer periods of time, and you will find these intense periods of grief affecting you less and less.
That's remarkable, because that's exactly what's, and it's like, it amazes me that it's this consistent, you know, straight across the board with people, but we're clueless, because I'm telling you, it's like, what is wrong with me? I was feeling fine. Why am I crying? Why can't I stop? You know, or I had a dream like last week that my husband and I were at a store. He was getting gas, and I was piddling around in the store, and he left me. It was a bad part of town. I tried calling him, and the cell phone was off, and I kept saying, you abandoned me, you abandoned me, you abandoned me. So I'm up at 3 o'clock side of my bed praying and crying.
Now, another thing that people do during this intense phase of grief is they tell the story over and over and over and over and over again to all their friends. You relive the whole thing. But this also is therapeutic. Now, the thing is, you need enough friends because you can actually drive your friends away.
Girl, I got 3AB in the whole world.
But, you know, it's an intense period where you just talk about it and talk about it. You have this need to relive it. But this, again, is part of getting it out, getting rid of it, dealing with the reality. You're no longer in denial. The true effects are there in front of you. So you are getting ready to let go, and letting go is the final stage.
Wow, letting go. Let me back up for a second to the adjustment stage. Now, if someone was taking notes, how would we chronologically break down the adjustment stage?
It's stage 3. It's stage 3 with letting go be the final. And as you finally let go, your self-esteem has now been reestablished. You have taken the time, you've done the counseling, you've taken the time to reassess who you are. You have accepted yourself now as a single person.
So the role of a counselor is the same role as a friend or your friends that you...
Yes.
Okay, because I have a dear friend, Darlene Hall, has called me almost every single day for 5 months. And it has really been so, I mean, we would pray, we would fast together, and I'm like, Lord, you know, and I really see and understand the mending. So, you know, for our viewers who are dealing with divorce, this is just so powerful for them. So when we talk about how long, and I know we can't say I know.
A minimum of 2 years.
2 years?
A minimum of 2 years, and it is not unusual for people to go 4 or even longer in this time frame. But it is next to impossible to deal with everything that needs to be dealt with in the aftermath of divorce in less than 2 years. Now, let me just mention one other aspect. Can you begin to see all of these phases that we've just talked about and how dangerous it would be to start another relationship when you have not finished grieving the loss of the last relationship?
Oh, Nancy, we're going to have another show. We're going to have to deal with that. We just can't brush over that one, okay? So you will come for another show?
I would be happy.
Well, let me ask you about this one. 2 to 4 years. And is that because there's still emotions that we're not identifying with, that we haven't experienced? Why so long?
It just takes that long when you've been a married person. Of course, the longer you've been married, the longer the grieving time may be. Now, what happens is men particularly try to brush over this grieving time. In our society, men have not been trained, nor have they been encouraged to deal openly with their emotions. So frequently, they will try to shut the door on their emotions and go immediately into a new relationship. They shut the door rather than dealing with the emotions. Now, some women feel real lucky to get a man who's just 6 months single out of a death or a divorce.
And end up living through.
But what she has to do then is nurse this man through the grieving process. He too has to go through the grieving process. He doesn't recognize it. But he is not going to be a free person. And you know, really, as Christians, we should present ourselves on the market as healed individuals rather than giving a false impression that we are all healed when we are not. Mm-hmm. We want to present ourselves on the dating market as a Christian, free, able to love. And many people are not this way. And again, they close the door on the past, and because the new relationship is so exciting that they want to forget the past. It's much more fun to build a new relationship than it is to deal with the past. So they just go right back into dating to try to forget.
It's like burying something that's alive.
Right. Oh. It really is.
So is it typical that men have a harder time identifying with their grieving process?
Yes.
So they go through grieving even if they're the ones that want the divorce?
Yes. It doesn't matter if they have initiated the divorce or not. Everybody must go through the grieving process. Some will take it, you know, we can't predict. 2 to 4 years is an estimate. But from the best grief counselors out there, that is the estimate. And some will even go as far as to say 7 years. But 7 years later, 7 years later, if a woman is still setting the table for her husband who has passed away and still talking to him, we are talking about a person who has not completed the grieving process. And this happens too.
Okay. Another question for the, you know, the husband that's grieving who doesn't identify with it because maybe it was his choice, he thought he wanted out of it. How can you tell him that, you know, sir, you're grieving?
If a man did come to me, I would walk him through the various stages of grief so that he could identify what stage he was in. And the good thing is that many men are becoming more cognizant today of their feelings and their emotions and more willing to seek help when help is needed.
So in other words, identifying with the realities of divorce.
Yes.
Nancy, before we go any further, what is your website?
My website is www.heartandhome.com.
Okay, www.heartandhome.
H-E-A-R-T, and then the letter N, and the word home, H-O-M-E.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in. You promise to come back?
I'd love to.
We've got to talk about happiness and divorce.
All right.
After divorce.
After divorce. There is life after divorce.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Issues and Answers. And you know what? Whatever issues you have, God has the answers, and you have us. So make sure you email me at melissa.summers@3abn.org. God bless till next time. Bye.